They're two happy women bringing you inspiring stories, politics, pop culture, and lifestyle hacks, all with an eye to making our communities and our country a better place to live. It's the Happy Women Podcast with your hosts, Jen Horn and Katie Gorka.
Thanks for joining us and welcome to another episode of the Happy Women Podcast. I'm Jennifer Horn.
And I'm Katie Gorka.
And happy Thanksgiving and now Merry Christmas because we're back in action. I feel like because Thanksgiving was so late this year that Christmas is like, there's been no buffering. I mean, here we are. I've been I don't think we Cyber Monday as much anymore, but I was Black Friday shopping, enjoying time with the fam on Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving trip? You were away. Did you have a great time?
We were in Colorado and it was so gorgeous. Oh my goodness. This country, our country is amazing. We had snow, but then we were down in Fort Collins and it was cold, but it was sunny. We went for a beautiful hike. I love getting out into different parts of the country because we live in a beautiful country.
We sure do. And one thing about Colorado, if you appreciate the outdoors, and I do, and I know you do, and you and I had the great fortune of going to Alaska together, which is one of those amazing places. Colorado is like that too. Colorado, you can go to different parts of the state and it looks like you're in a completely different world. I've spent a lot of time there because my mom's family ended up retiring there. My grandfather was in TV and actually worked for the ABC affiliate in Denver as Oprah was launching, by the way. He knew her before she was Oprah. And said that she always looked like she was uncomfortable in her high heel shoes. Just a very grandpa notification. But I got to spend a lot of time there. And there is just some beautiful, beautiful parts of Colorado to explore. So I'm glad you had a great time.
Super fun. And especially because it snowed. I always love the snow.
I love it. I know we didn't get any snow. It's actually warming up here in California. After it got cold, now we're back to like 80 degrees. It's like, this does not feel like the season. All right. So let's jump into it because there is lots to talk about. Now, people were going crazy. I don't know why. It's not unusual for a president to pardon a turkey on Thanksgiving, but that's exactly what Joe Biden did. He pardoned the ultimate turkey, his son Hunter, after saying for months and months and months that he wouldn't do it and making the people around him lie, saying he wouldn't do it. Karine Jean-Pierre saying over and over and over again as press secretary that he wasn't going to pardon his son. And Katie, I get it. I'm close to my parents. You're close to your kids. I understand why you want to protect your son, but this wasn't just pardoning him for the crimes that we know he committed. This was a 10-year pardon, one of the most powerful pardons our country has seen, more powerful than the pardon of Richard Nixon after he left office. I mean, this is a 10-year span. And that tells me that this was not just about the charges that have been levied against Hunter Biden that he's been convicted on. This is about the stuff that maybe we don't know about yet, or the stuff that we suspect, but that hasn't really made it through the court system yet. And it makes you wonder what's next. Is Jim Biden? Is it Jill Biden? Joe Biden pardoned himself. I mean, there's been a lot of smoke and a lot of fire about what the Biden family did in an effort to enrich themselves, and makes you wonder just how much of that was true. I think this is the proof that what we've been saying all along actually really did happen.
And I have to say, I think what really also just galled me was Biden's statement about the pardon. I thought this was incredible. He said, I had said I wouldn't interfere, but he also came out and said, I'm trying to find his actual words, he said something like, it was clear that this was a political case, that this was a political attack, and he was only charged because he's President Biden's son. Mm-hmm. Come on. I mean, there's just, the evidence is ample. So I think what's going to be really interesting is to see what President Trump decides to do with this. And, I think it presents a tremendous dilemma for President Trump. We've got this unwritten rule that new presidents don't go after former presidents, whatever they may have done. But I just find the level of theft and bribery and corruption within the Biden family, there is so much evidence now. And I think it was to a degree that was so egregious. that I really question whether people will have a restored faith in the Department of Justice if there isn't something done about this. I don't know. Where do you stand on this?
So, first of all, I get the fact that he would want to pardon his son. What I take issue with is the 10-year period. I also take issue with everything that the Democrats have said about Joe Biden, really respecting the law. And this was, he was not going to act above the law, always trying to take apart President Trump and his integrity, when the Democrats all along are the ones who, when they call you a name, actually encompass whatever they're calling you. The fact that he said he would never do it and then changed his mind, I think is a problem, because it really puts egg on the face of everybody who defended him. That being said, I do think that it is going to be interesting to see what happens. I think strategically he made an error. And the error is that he should have come out, if he wanted this optically to fly. I'm a messaging girl. My background was in PR and journalism. And so every time I look at the messaging around Biden, he gets it wrong. Karine Jean-Pierre has been terrible. They've never taken the people's issues seriously. They just gaslight you and tell you there's no problems. Immigration's fine. The border's fine. Inflation, no problem. I think what's going to get them here is that if he was really serious about the optics, he would have pardoned Trump at the same time. Not that Trump even needs the pardon, because all of the federal stuff is falling apart against him, but he could have come out and used this to his advantage, saying, you know what, our DOJ has gone overboard. There's a weaponizing of this system. I'm going to make sure that it doesn't happen. I'm going to pardon Trump. I'm going to pardon Hunter. That would have been the best look for him. But they're not smart enough to do that. And so
that
he just
is brilliant.
Right?
I cannot believe that you're not in government advising really important people, because if he had done that, it would have completely taken the air out of any argument. Why did I not think of that?
Well, you can pass my resume along. You know where to take it. I'm just kidding. But it's true. I just don't understand optically why they would miss that opportunity, because truly there's really nothing to dismiss against Trump. It was all a bunch of nonsense. It's not like you're really letting him off the hook for anything. It would be all just on paper. And then you look and say, you know what, maybe we had some errors. Wow, we got to get better. And then you're out and you look like the golden boy. And you also kind of stick it to Democrats because, they're the ones who are peddling this. So it really would have been a win-win, I think, for Joe Biden. So he missed that opportunity. Where I think he is really being short-sighted as well is that he thinks a pardon of Hunter for this 10-year period is going to stop the investigations into him. I think he believes that people will say, you know what, if we can't prosecute him, why are we going to continue investigating? Let's work on something else. And I don't think that that's actually going to be the case, because now what they've done, every legal expert that has had a chance to talk about this as a talking head has said now Hunter Biden is going to have to testify and he's going to have to tell the truth, because before he was going to be able to not incriminate himself. Well, now that this potential prosecution is off the table, Hunter could potentially have to testify under oath against his dad, against his uncle, who knows, against Jill Biden, who I also think is really complicit in this. So I think that there are a lot of things that really maybe were not thought through in the way that they should have been when he came out with this.
And we're not surprised.
No.
All right. Before we shift to the next news story, I have to interject a little good news story. The Wall Street Journal reported that as print book sales stagnate in the U.S., Bible sales are soaring. I love that.
I love it.
Bible sales are up 22% in the United States through October compared with the same period last year. Isn't that cool?
Do you kind of feel like there's a shift? And this is just anecdotal, but I do feel like there's a shift back to just, I don't even know if the right word is conservatism, but I do think everybody's taken a step back. And I think people are starting to look inward a little more. And I would say that that's probably where people are trying to get in touch with their spirituality again. I don't know. I feel like there is something happening.
Well, that's interesting. That kind of feeds into one of the other stories that I wanted to talk about today, which was a story, it was posted a couple days ago by Peachy Keenan, which I understand is a pen name, and we don't know her real name, but she writes under Peachy Keenan. The title is The Election Story Nobody is Talking About. And she had written a book called domestic extremist, a practical guide to winning the culture war. We got to get her on the show.
I know. She's right up our alley. I know it.
Totally up our alley.
You know, it's so funny. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I was at an event for Steve Hilton, who was thinking about running for governor, and she was there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love all your stuff. You've got to come on our podcast. And so now this is a catalyst to get her on. We're going to do it.
All right, we got to get her on. So she, you know, the thing that sort of she argues is getting women to kind of embrace a traditional role, right? Mm-hmm. And so the article, what she's talking about is the fact that everybody was saying it was going to be a wipeout in favor of Kamala amongst female voters. And it didn't happen. The point she makes is that while Kamala did win a majority with women, it was only by 7 points. I was shocked.
Not a wipeout. Definitely not a wipeout.
And it was better. I mean, it was Biden had done better with women than Kamala did, which I thought was really, really interesting. She does say that among white women specifically, Trump won 43% to Kamala's 45%. But this was what I also thought was super, super interesting. And this kind of gets at what you were just saying. And this makes me hopeful, right? He says, so apparently Trump improved substantially on the 33% of his demographic win in female voters 18 to 29. So that's young amazing. Women, he went from 33% of their vote in the last election to 40%. So all that screaming about abortion, and you know, this was really, this really just hit home for me because of that event that I went to, where I got put in the position of representing the Trump campaign. Not by them. It was just because there was nobody else in Northern Virginia who was available to do it. And so I represented the Trump campaign up against somebody representing the Harris campaign and somebody representing the Socialists campaign in front of hundreds of local high school students. And the way they hammered on the abortion agenda, it really had me concerned, and it had me feeling like the only thing young women care about is the freedom to have abortions. So I was just so encouraged to read this article, and I think it really is a sign that things might be changing.
I think also that the distrust in government is actually a good thing. I think it's good for people to question. And I think we should question everything. We should question the science. And I really think it was a combination of things. One, I think COVID and, of course, all of those new reports, the new congressional reports that are out telling us everything we knew for the last 4 or 5 years is actually true after we were called conspiracy theorists. All of that coming out. I think the fact that they vilified Trump hard, I mean, it was in such a big, bad way. And Joe Biden comes in there and he makes all these promises and then he doesn't deliver on any of them. All they had left was abortion. And so I know at least the only ads that I saw from Kamala Harris's campaign. And again, living in California, we're not necessarily the hotspot for presidential advertising because they feel like they don't need to do it here. But there were some ads that I would see during national broadcasts. And all it was about women and women's reproductive rights and abortion, because literally that was all they had. And they were fear mongering. So for some liberal women, it worked. I think they painted this image of Trump winning and then us all going into costume in The Handmaid's Tale or whatever it was. I mean, I think that there was a small percentage of people, but those young people have been lied to by the government. They've been lied to by the so-called scientists. They're seeing this because they're being inundated on social media with all these messages. I think this is actually a good point because young people weren't picking up newspapers or listening to talk radio, but they are on social media. And now conservative messages are free flowing on social media. I think this makes people question everything. And I think that's why it didn't work for her this time around. I think she thought that was what she could do to scare people into voting for her. And that just wasn't the case. And I'm happy to see it. I want people to reflect and ask questions of everybody, President Trump or otherwise. We should all be questioning and coming to decisions ourselves and not let people spoon feed us.
It's no secret. The world's unpredictable. One moment, everything's fine. And the next, the power's out and the cell towers are down. But with a satellite phone from sat123.com, you don't have to be cut off from the world. No matter where you are or what's happening, Sat123 keeps you connected. Whether you're deep in the mountains, on the road, or dealing with a natural disaster, your satellite phone will work when nothing else does. This is about being prepared. Sat123.com is family owned, American built, and focused on keeping you safe. They understand that in today's world, connection is more than convenience. It's essential. So here's the deal. Go to sat123.com and use code Katie for $25 off your first purchase. Don't get caught off guard. Stay connected. Stay prepared with Sat123. Yeah. Hey, and can we just talk about one thing that I feel has kind of been brushed under the carpet as quickly as possible, and that is the fact that not only did Kamala spend just an obscene amount of money and end up in debt so that she is still having to fundraise to cover that debt, but the amounts of money that were paid to so-called journalists. I mean, Al Sharpton and Oprah, $500,000 to Al Sharpton. And I know that they try to gloss this over and say, oh, no, it wasn't a payment to me. It was a donation to my charity. I'm sorry. That's payola. That is payola.
I have a charity like
them.
My charity's for a golden toilet like Oprah. That's how I know I'll make it one of these days. Yeah, I can't believe she's still fundraising, and I can't believe anybody is sending her any money at this point. And I want to tell you, when we dodged a bullet, we dodged a big bullet, because if this is any indication as to how she'd run the country, looking at how she ran her campaign, the sheer amount of money. I mean, you're talking about like billions, $100 billion.
Yep.
And she couldn't pull off a win. And she couldn't, I mean, really, it was a big loss. I know the left likes to say that it was not a big loss. It was a big loss. And President Trump tightened every margin with every demographic group and did all of the things that he did with the country to the right. And she had that much money. If that's how she were going to handle this country's budget, I mean, we really did dodge it. The fact that she wouldn't do the mainstream podcast because she didn't want to answer the questions. The fact that she built a whole studio for that ridiculous podcast that she went on, but wouldn't do a Joe Rogan show. These are just, I mean, money thrown into a toilet. And I have to ask, I know you were traveling last week, but did you see the Kamala explanation video?
Oh, the version of it that I really like the best is where someone used AI to put a martini in her hand.
That's what it looked like.
It was really embarrassing. I'm embarrassed for her.
Well, I just don't know who in her campaign, and maybe Misty, you can pop it in here for us. I just don't know who in her campaign would have allowed that to be posted. Who around her does not like her enough to let that be posted? I don't know if she's just taking the loss like in a tough way, if this has just been hard for her and she just looks. Oh, David Plouffe is her campaign manager? Okay. David Plouffe is her campaign manager. I don't know if it was that person or if it was someone on her staff that said this would be a great idea to post this video to donors. But she either looks really dark, like she's having a hard time with the loss, or she looked like she was definitely enjoying herself. I don't know. If you listen to just the audio, she only slurs a little bit. But if you look at the video, she looks drawn. She does not look like the Kamala we saw on the campaign trail.
No.
And I just don't know why somebody would have done that to her. Maybe it was just a video call. I don't know. Or excuse me, an audio call. I don't know why they posted that video. It didn't do her any favors.
Yeah, I think it's also been interesting that some of her other campaign staff have come out on videos kind of revealing some of the inside baseball, which I don't know, is that just people trying to save their skins and make sure that they have future careers? But I find that kind of shocking as well.
I think what it just shows me is that the left still does not get what went wrong here. I think that many of them are still scratching their head. I do the morning show in Los Angeles, and my partner, Grant Stinchfield, said, Jen, do you really think that Kamala thought she was going to win? And I said, yeah, I absolutely do. I think people convinced her that she was going to be a shoo-in, that she was going to save the party from Joe Biden, that she was going to be the one. And I think she believed it. And so, look, we all should. I'm not even faulting her for that. If you run for office, you should believe that you can win. I think that's probably a piece of your success. But watching Jen O'Malley Dillon on whatever podcast she was on recently, and she was talking about what cost Kamala the election. And she blamed the friendly media that Kamala actually sat down with for asking her stupid questions. I mean, are you kidding me? This is a woman who had every opportunity to go on Fox News, go to Newsmax, go to some podcasts. She wouldn't do it. She wouldn't spend more than 10 seconds answering questions off the cuff. You can't blame the woman on the Call Her Daddy podcast for asking stupid questions. Look at where you are. I mean, it's bizarre. They still don't get it. And I'm hopeful that they don't, because the more they are out of touch, and they have lost touch with the voter, Katie, this is where my hope comes from. It's from Trump performing in 2 years, because I know he will, and he'll generate results for the American people. And it's for the left doubling down on the same old tired stuff that caused them to lose in so many places, not just across the country, but in very blue cities and states, like I've been watching in California, like you've been watching in Virginia.
I think one thing that's going to be really interesting as well is, that the left is going to use some of their old tactics, which is to gin up these fake stories, to come out with these attacks. Yeah. I think the American people are fed up with that as well. I mean, look, it really is a part of our national identity, that respect for truth, that respect for, respect the other person and having different views. And I think I think that too is really going to backfire. Unfortunately, I think it's all that the left has right now are those kind of attacks, because they certainly don't have better policies to offer. And I think that's going to also further tarnish their image in the eyes of Americans, which I'm happy to take it. Let them do it.
We'll take it how we can get it, because you have to have some success stories. I was listening to a clip from Charlemagne, who's obviously hugely listened to in the country, and he was referring to the story about Hunter Biden's pardon, and he said, I don't care that they pardoned Hunter Biden, but what I care about is that they pretend to be this party of purity, basically, that they seem to be like looking down on everyone else because the Democrats are so up here and they're so respectful of the law. He's like, just knock it off. People are tired of that. They don't want to be talked down to from the very people that are doing the worst things. So
wait, is he on the left or on the right?
Charlemagne's an interesting one because he's on the left. I think he voted for Kamala, but he has really been public about his he was just not satisfied with Kamala's performance. I think he knew she was going to lose. Not happy with Biden. He definitely doesn't like Trump, but I think he also understood why people were looking at Trump as an alternative to what they were being given. So I think he gets it, but I do think he's a Democrat. I don't know how far left he is, though.
I have to say, it has been super interesting to watch people shifting to the right. I'm thinking particularly like Joe Rogan. I mean, I just think it's fascinating. He was hardcore never Trumper, and now he's on the Trump train. And the other person I just have to mention is a friend and somebody I really, really like is Konstantin Kisin. And, for the longest, he's a British, if you don't know who he is, he's a British comedian who got outed, basically got kind of kicked off the comedy circuit for unpolitically correct jokes. Okay. Politically incorrect jokes. So then he started a podcast, which is great. And he, for the longest time, has said, both publicly and privately, I'm not a conservative. I'm in the middle, whatever. And he finally just last week came out and said, all right, already, I'm a conservative. I think it's the title of his most recent Substack post. And I just, more.
Well, it's becoming normalized now. You don't have the Trump people in the shadows. I was at a funeral yesterday and a guy shows up in a 45, 47 hat to a funeral. Like I thought, this is... Why not? But just real quick on Charlemagne, he did talk about Trump's most effective ad, and he pointed to that one about the males in female sports. And he said, if I'm sitting home watching football, which he was, and I see that commercial, I'm going to say, these people are crazy on the left, and I'm going to vote for Trump. So I think he sees it. But we have to talk about Newsom, Gavin Newsom. He is something else, Katie. So in California, we had eight counties flip from blue to red. Trump got to 40% of the vote, which is pretty good in California. I know it's not great for other states, but for us, that's pretty good. A lot of places where he closed the margin. And we even had a few wins when it comes to the assembly and to our state Senate, where we flipped some seats for the first time, I think, since 1990, something during a presidential year. We flipped some seats in the assembly and the Senate from Democrat to Republican. So there are some changes. Now, the Democrats still have the supermajority, but Newsom's response to Trump's win is not looking in the mirror and saying, what did we do wrong? It's, well, we better get ready to fight him. So literally since the election was called for Trump, since election night, Gavin Newsom has been on a Trump-proof California tour. And he's gone to all of those counties that Trump won in 2024 that he lost in 2020. He's been doing like a listening tour, talking to people and listening and, making his promise throughout the state. Well, now he called back a special session of our state legislature. So they came back early. They came back this week, and all of that was in an effort for Gavin Newsom to get them to vote on $25 million so that there will be a nice legal slush fund to take on President Trump with the Attorney General, Rob Bonta. And a friend of ours is Bill Asaley, who's an assemblyman from the Inland Empire, and he actually showed up to the Capitol wearing his dark MAGA hat.
I saw the picture. I loved it.
Make America Great Again hat, asking for rights for the minority party. And he's got some new friends with him. His posse has gotten a little bigger because we have some Republicans that are going to be with them and be the thorn in the side of Democrats. But this is what Newsom's going to do. They're missing the point. Instead of revamping the message of the party, the direction of the Democrat Party, which is leaving people behind left and right, the answer is, well, we're going to use taxpayer dollars in a state where we're already in a budget deficit. We're going to spend $25 million to take on Trump just to pump up Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign in 4 years.
So are you getting any sense yet of what kinds of things they would be suing about? What are some of the specific legal cases?
Immigration. That's front and center. There's actually there's a mayor in Newport Beach Newport Beach is a lovely area. It's very kind of high end, definitely upper middle class area. They've got boatfuls of illegal immigrants now washing up on the shore outside of the shopping mall in Newport Beach. Wow. And so the mayor there is grateful that they're coming in by sea because he's able to actually have the Coast Guard, which is federally funded, arrest them. If it were up to Newport Beach police, you couldn't because California is a sanctuary state. There's another mayor in El Cajon, California, which is right on the border near San Diego. And he has come out and said, I want my police officers in my city to help enforce these immigration policies of the Trump administration, but I need to start raising money to provide a legal fund for them because there's a real fear that anyone in law enforcement who is cooperating with federal immigration agents are going to get taken down by the state. So I'm sure the front and center place for the fight will be about immigration because even when it comes to criminals who are here committing crimes, they want to protect them. And I'm sure there are going to be some environmental issues. Trump said he was going to get rid of the electric vehicle tax rebate. President Gavin Newsom has already said, well, we're going to put that back in place in California, even though we have no money to offer people rebates for electric vehicles. There'll be issues with water and with fire resources, I'm sure. So there'll be some financial stuff, but front and center, I'm sure it's going to be a lot about immigration early on.
I think the immigration piece is so interesting because the legal immigrants, especially the Hispanics, the ones that I've talked to, they are not happy about the illegal immigration. Yeah. So to show our local governments out, sort of sticking their neck out to protect illegal immigrants, I think is only going to drive these voters further over to the Republican side.
I do too. It's very short-sighted. And, we're already a sanctuary state. The LA City Council last week with the background, I think we might have even talked about it with the trial that was going on in Georgia. The city council decides they want to be a sanctuary city. This is simply just symbolic, but it just shows you that they're willing to fight. And where I think it does backfire is that President Trump did extremely well with Latino voters in the country and in the state of California. There is a desire for law and order, and there is a desire to make sure that our communities are safe. And the immigration issue brings in a lot of gang activity and a lot of drugs, and those people are sick of it. And so I really do think that they're on the wrong path when they're doubling down on protecting people, particularly those who are here committing crimes.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Well, we have caught up on a lot. And of course, we thank you for joining us. And we thank you always for not only the 5-star reviews, but sharing Happy Women with your friends. It really does help us. And we're on a multitude of platforms. You can get them all. If you like video, if you like audio, connect with us everywhere at SalemPodcastNetwork.com. Just look for the Happy Women graphic and get Katie's book. It's called Next Gen Marxism, which you can find anywhere you buy books. You can also go to her website, katiegorka.org. You can search her out on Facebook. Just search for Catherine Gorka, or on Twitter /X at Gorka Katie. You can find me on social media too, Jennifer Horn Radio on Instagram and Facebook, and at Jennifer Horn on X and on Truth Social. And we thank you so much for joining us. This is the Happy Women Podcast.